Hey, you know what? And we love you for trying. Good job.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just gonna tell you. So,
There it is. Look at that. Praise Jesus. I was looking. I was like, it's good. Somebody threw it away, and I didn't
no,
print it out again.
no,
So,
I didn't know if you needed it, so I'm like,
yeah,
I'm
I
just
got to
gonna
do
fold it
this
for the
again.
notes here, but
So,
okay. I'm gonna go ahead and just close that out. So what she was saying here. So, are you putting up a presentation again, or no?
yes, I'm doing mine
You're
again,
gonna do it.
which
Okay,
is.
but we can't put it up yet
No, I know.
because now that we're okay.
You can put that up.
Well, as long as it isn't. What
It's
is
just a
that?
slide.
But it's not gonna show. I can't.
Why?
I can't.
All you got to do is.
Because I have to, we're live streaming, and so
Oh, I got you.
she needs the live portion to be on this right now. Sorry.
That's okay.
This
Oh,
is the first
good.
time we're live streaming from here, so. Oh,
Hi. How are you? I'm Melina. Yes. Hi. Kelly. Yeah. I'm Kelly. I'm the other Kelly. Lots of Kellys. Yep.
yeah, I'm Kelly.
Oh, nice. Oh, very good.
Well, I can't really. I do have your presentation up here. When it comes time, whenever you're done, or whenever they're done, and it's your turn, if you just want to come up here. It's kind of hard right now because we're live streaming for the first time for this. So this is the live. Just consider this the live monitor. So this is what everybody's going to see. This is the working monitor. This is what you can click on and what you're going to navigate. Okay. So I'm gonna try it. I know she's not gonna like me to do it, but so you just open up your thing, and then when you go slideshow from beginning, I'm gonna do it. But so this is your navigation. This is but this is where everybody's gonna see. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna close it out because I know. Sorry. And so it's right up here on the desktop. So just let me know if you have any problems, and if I can always come up here too. Whenever you're ready.
As soon as you catch up. So the interpreters are going to stand next to the podium,
Okay.
and they're just going to swap out.
Okay. Gotcha.
That way, then the interpreters will be on the stream,
Okay.
and they know that the only time it will be difficult. We might need to work on this for the next time.
Okay.
When they do the presentation and we stream, the person only comes up in a small box. It might be difficult for them to see. So just be aware.
Okay.
We might have to. I can either do this screen, the camera, or that little picture-in-picture.
Okay.
There's no how. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Okay.
So
Okay. Well, we can do what we can do. So.
we'll do it this way this time, and then you guys can review it, and then in 3 months when we do it again, if we need to change it up, we'll change it up.
Okay. And then what happens like with whenever you live stream? Is it really live? I mean,
Yes.
so where's this people viewing this at on Facebook? Where's this go?
No, it goes to our City Hall channel,
Oh, okay.
and Stephanie's communicated that out through
Okay.
PR.
Okay.
And then what will happen is I will send it to PR, and then PR will post it on the YouTube channel
Gotcha.
for viewing after tonight.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Do we have all the presentations downloaded?
They're up here.
And then
Yes.
Did we have any videos that we're showing at all, or we're not?
No.
No, we're not.
Nope.
Just, okay.
Nope. So it's whatever you're just gonna run through, whatever you want to run through this time around, and then we've got the prisoners. Kelly, she's got a presentation I've got up there, and then Kalina, and then I don't have anything for the fire department. So I'm assuming there's anything on there.
Yeah.
So, and I've got those two.
Yeah, at the end here.
Yes, just the.
And what do you think? I think we're gonna have to. So I'm going to talk about. I'm going to announce Samantha's house of caregiver, right? In front of Yeah, I think we're gonna let's do calendar next. I'm gonna introduce you recognition, and then just say tonight's meeting is important about caregivers and the role that they're playing.
Right. Got it.
Okay, got your stuff.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. We are running a little late. The traffic is really bad, unfortunately. So we're going to probably start in like 10 minutes, if that's okay. It just with traffic and construction. So we have a drawing that we're doing. So please be sure that you get a red ticket. We have Stacy coming around giving everybody a ticket for tonight. Okay, before we get started, I wanted to make sure, did everyone get a raffle ticket? We have a for door prizes this evening, so I want to make sure that everybody has a red ticket. So we're going to do that at the end. So, okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I know that it's a busy day, and I appreciate everybody coming tonight. My name is Cecilia Coble. On behalf of the City of Fishers and the Fishers Advisory Committee on Disability, I'd like to thank you all for coming to our quarterly meeting. This is the first quarterly meeting of the Fishers Advisory Committee on Disability. We meet 4 times a year, and we have subcommittees, and we have a subcommittee that's been working very hard in March Disability Awareness Month. So we have a wonderful month-long events that we've been working with, and so on behalf of our March Disability Committee, I want to welcome you here. I want to also introduce at this time my co-chair, Kelly Hartman. She joined as one of my co-chairs this year. She is the president and board member of Outside the Box, and she's also president and CEO of Insights Consulting. She's been a longtime champion of the disability community, and I really appreciate her coming alongside me to help to co-chair the Disability Advisory Committee on Disability. So thank you, Kelly, for all your efforts. I appreciate that. March is National Disability Awareness Month, and this is our 4th year that the Fishers Advisory Committee on Disability and the City of Fishers will host a month-long celebration to bring awareness of what life is like for those with physical and intellectual disabilities. With this year's theme, Focus 2020, we will focus on the past, present, and future of disability inclusion in Fishers. So we want everyone to join us for fun events throughout March to celebrate the contributions and talents of those with physical and intellectual disabilities in our community, discover opportunities and resources for education, inclusion, employment, accessibility, and accommodations. We want to honor the role of our local caregivers and those who serve as direct support providers, explore how we unite with community partners to advocate and support the needs of our residents. Help us acknowledge our successes as a community dedicated to making Fishers an inclusive, accessible community for all abilities. So yesterday we had our kickoff. We had 3 caregivers from our community who are strong advocates and also serve on the Fishers Advisory Committee on Disability March Awareness Subcommittee. We had Wilbur Sutton and Todd Root and Mary Kennedy, who gave a wonderful panel discussion about what life is like for them and their families here in Fishers. It was a wonderful event to kick everything off. I want to encourage everybody to look at their table right now. We have a flyer with all of the events that are scheduled for our month of March. This would not be possible without our sponsors, so I want to just quickly thank all of our sponsors, Connor Prairie, Fishers YMCA. They are both our presenting sponsors for Focus 2020. Our platinum sponsors, Superior Van and Mobility, InTrack Relay Indiana, platinum sponsors. Our gold sponsors, the Hamilton East Public Library. Please look at their website. They have a number of different workshops and support groups happening throughout the month of March that give awareness about even the hidden disabilities that people may not think about, like MS or dementia, dyslexia. So please look at all those events happening at the library. The Switch Theater and the June Lee Music Academy, we have 2 events happening at the Switch Theater. We have a performing arts variety show where we're going to showcase the talent of people with physical and intellectual disabilities in our community. We're also featuring 2 movies, 2 short films that are in partnership with the Heartland Film and the Indiana Filmmakers Network, and that is the screening of Grateful and 1500 Miles. and they're both short films that portray people with challenges with disabilities. After the screening, there'll be a panel discussion with the filmmakers and all the protagonists involved to hopefully bring awareness about some of the challenges and also inspire filmmakers to look about how they can create films that bring awareness to causes to impact society in a good way. So it's really exciting. We also want to thank Insights Consulting, Opportunities for Positive Growth, Grace Church, and Fishers. They're doing a reverse job fair for us, and that is on March 24th at 3 p.m., 1 to 3 p.m., and please look at the website to register. If you are a person with a disability that would like to be a candidate for that reverse job fair, please sign up for that event. I also want to thank Easter Day Homes, the Heartland Film, Indiana Filmmakers Network, Tangram, Sharp Printing, the Fishers Arts Council that has been working very hard. President Tom Rich has been working very hard to showcase and exhibit all the amazing artists in our community that have disabilities and who are very talented. We have an art reception coming up this Friday at Conner Prairie from 6 to 9 p.m. It's open to the public. We have beautiful art being displayed at City Hall, and we have 18 businesses around our community that are exhibiting artwork for these amazing artists throughout our community, so that is wonderful. This would not be possible without our sponsors, so our committee members, so I want to take this time to recognize them.
Hi. These are the folks that have really put their heart and soul into making sure that March is an amazing month. I think it's important for us to understand that although March is Disability Awareness Month, we are asking you to keep these things in focus all year long. People with disabilities don't just have them for 1 month a year. So one of the things that we talked about yesterday was how important it is to not just think about inclusion as something that's polite, where we scratch the surface, but that we as a community have the opportunity to really work forward and take big steps boldly towards doing it right. And that's the exciting part about being part of this committee. So I want to recognize Cecilia Coble, who is really the biggest champion there is. You deserve an applause by yourself. Amy Corbin, Chrissy Pogue, Don McCool, Duncan Sinise, Jennifer Harmon, Julie King, Karen Russell, Leah Connolly, Leslie Brown, Lynn Jones, Mary Kennedy, Michelle Steltz, Sarah Cox, Sean Addison, Shelby Slovic, Steve Lozier, Tricia Dixon, Wilbur Sutton, Kelly Fisher, Jen Reardon McSorley, Olivia Rodriguez, Carrie Sheward, Todd Root, M.E. Barkwatz, Tina Lopez, Beth Rodabush, Stacy Oldham, Ross Hillary. And thanks for letting me read those names to you. But first of all, if you're here, please stand up if you're part of that committee. Yay! I give these guys a round of applause.
As you can see, there is a lot going on. Some of our major events that we have going on in the month of March is an employment event. It's a breakfast at Conner Prairie, looking at employment differently. That is March 12th, Thursday, from 8:30 to 10:30 at Conner Prairie. Conner Prairie has been so gracious in providing the venue not only for our art reception this Friday, but also for the employment breakfast that we are doing. If you are an employer here in Fishers or around the surrounding area, we encourage you please to sign up. On the Fishers website, there's a registration Eventbrite link. We really feel that this is an important part of what's really important to the disability community. 70% of people with disabilities are either underemployed or unemployed. And so our goal is to try to bring awareness about how employers can be supported through various resources, organizations that are there helping to train these candidates. And we are trying to match qualified and capable and willing candidates with the right jobs here in Fishers. So we're really excited. We have a lot and a lot of employers already on our list, so please reach out to me or someone from city staff if you're interested in getting involved. I also want to just point out we have a wonderful event, our sports showcase and talent show over at Fishers High School. That's open to the public. It's going to be March 21st from 2 to 6 p.m. at Fishers High School. Very interactive with adaptive sports teams that are coming to showcase their talents. There'll be games, there'll be talent, there'll be a lot of fun that you can bring your loved ones, your family to be involved in that. So as you can see, we have a wonderful lineup of things that we are doing for the month of March. Today's meeting, though, is really focused on caregivers. This is something, I'm a caregiver myself. I have a daughter who has autism and cognitive delays, and this is near and dear to my heart. But one thing that is not talked about in so much when it comes to disabilities is the stress and how hard it can be at times as a caregiver. And being a parent and a grandparent can be hard, and then you add a disability into the mix and it makes things a lot more stressful. So Fishers has been amazing in trying to break the stigma of mental health, and we want to try to incorporate that into Disability Awareness Month to try to provide support and wellness to our caregivers. So one of the things I'm really excited to announce is we've partnered with the YMCA, who they are providing a 1-month pass, free pass in the month of March to our caregivers in our community. So I really appreciate the Y. Please be sure to pick up a pass and utilize that. They have wonderful amenities. They've been a great support to our school system in bringing kids to help volunteer and do various things within the Y. We also have wonderful businesses that are doing promotions in the month of March on Tuesdays, and you have a list here on your table, and we also have this on the website. Please present this sheet to the businesses there, and they're providing various discounts. So we really appreciate our community partners, our businesses. This is a community effort, and Kelly and I are so proud of what our city has done in collaboration with the Fishers Advisory Committee on Disability, each of you, and our partnership with all of these organizations and businesses here in Fishers. So without further ado, we want to make a special presentation today and get our meeting started for caregivers.
I'm super excited to be new to this role and have big shoes to fill after Stacy was the co-chair previously. Exciting to me as I thought after being part of this committee for 3 years that I'd kind of learned what was going on in Fishers. And the cool thing is there's always new things happening in Fishers. And so as a result of Cecilia and I's role with the committee, we were approached by some individuals from a foundation called Samantha's House. I will be honest and tell you I'd never heard of Samantha's House. And we sat down and had this lovely meeting. And Samantha's House is doing something really amazing right here in Fishers. Even though Fishers is not the only place that they do things, I want to invite them up to talk a little bit about what it is that they do and what they're doing here in Fishers this year. Rachel?
Hello, my name is Rachel Flynn, and I am with the Samantha's House Foundation. Thank you for having us here today. The Samantha's House Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization which was created in 2005. Our organization helps seriously injured individuals improve their housing conditions and/or transportation needs. Over the last 14 years, we have built and given away homes and fully handicapped accessible vans. Each year, we aim to help one Central Indiana family. This year's recipient, a single mother, Robin Bowen, is a Fishers resident. Her teenage son, Trey, has cerebral palsy and is in a wheelchair. The Samantha's House Foundation provides fully handicapped accessible vans to these families that allow them to go to school, doctor's appointments, social events, whereas they may not be able to without a fully handicap accessible van. This year's recipient is here with us today. If she will stand, Robin Bowen. We will be providing a fully handicapped accessible van to Robin at our golf outing in June, on June 18th at Purgatory Golf Club. We hope that if there's anyone here that wants to attend, we hope that you pick up a flyer over from the table and come help celebrate us, gift the van to Robin. I'm going to turn the mic over to her. Thank you very much.
Hello, so I just immediately got nervous. I don't even know why, but as a caregiver, as many of you know that are here today as our caregivers, we are criers. So I'm gonna try my best not to cry. But, you know, there's just no words, honestly, because as I was driving over here, I was thinking, what is it that I'm gonna say? You know, it's like, how do I describe to these folks how I feel inside? And, you know, yeah, I'm excited, I'm elated, I'm truly thankful, but that's just not enough. Trey has been through a lot. He has cerebral palsy, and he's autistic, and about 3.5 years ago, he had spinal fusion surgery, and for lack of better words, he was just extremely debilitated after that. And today, he's working his way back to being a walker, and he's doing fairly well. But one of the hugest issues for him was transportation. And for 17 years of his life, basically, I was researching, because I am a social worker, so I'm in the field, so I should know everything they say, but really there just wasn't anything out there that was going to meet our needs, or they would you know, inform me that, you know, I was a candidate, and then I would be disappointed because it wasn't awarded to him for whatever reason. And so, you know, depression set in, anxiety set in, but I wasn't going to give up. So, like I said, about 3 years ago, he was he became more debilitated than he ever had been in his life. And transportation was always a huge issue. So one day I was getting ready to go to church, and Trey is like a big guy. I don't know, some of you guys may know him, but he's like super muscular and just, you know, he's way bigger than me. He's like, his dad is 6'3", so there just came a point just probably about a year ago where I just could not lift him anymore, because that's basically what I did all the time. And Samantha's house provided an application for me, or actually his PT did, and I submitted that, and along with that, I had to submit a videotape of him. And I got down on my hands and knees and asked the Lord to please lead me in this, help me to present him in a way that folks know exactly what I go through every day. And I'll hopefully be able to share that video with you guys at some point, but I mean, I did a lot. And, you know, like I said, the one thing that did it for me was he just recently had to get a new wheelchair, and the wheelchair weighs probably about 130 pounds because he's a big guy now. So with him in it, which he's about 135 pounds, I just could not move it anymore. So now Trey cannot go anywhere because I have an itty-bitty Kia Soul car, and the wheelchair that he had before, I could tear that down every time I went anywhere. Church, grocery store, my parents, his friends. I was constantly letting that wheelchair down, putting it back together, putting him in the wheelchair, you know, taking him wherever I needed to go. So he got his new wheelchair, and I said, Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do. He can't, you know, nobody's willing to transport him. Transportation is a huge deal up here in this particular county. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I prayed and got on my hands and knees. Long story short, Trey was awarded the van, and I mean, I just still can't even believe it. But I was laying down, and I woke up one morning just recently, and I said, I'm going to go to church. And honestly, I forgot we couldn't go to church because I didn't have anybody to take me, and nobody's going to be able to transport that wheelchair. So I just wanted to share that with you to let you know just how important this van is to me. It is going to change my life significantly. And it's going to change Trey's life because now he can engage. We can ride to the family reunion with people in the van with us. He can laugh, he can play. So it's just going to have a huge impact. So please, please find it in your heart to listen to us parents that have these little guys and also young adults because we need it. And in order for him to engage in his life in the community, he had to have this van. So I thank Samantha's House for changing our life. And I'm super excited to work with you guys. I cannot wait. So thank you.
Certainly, if you want to learn more about Samantha's House, like she said, they brought some information, and they'll be having a fundraiser, which is how they support reaching a family every year on June 18th. I want to circle back on this. If you know caregivers that could not be here tonight, certainly take these and give them to those caregivers. Everybody has the opportunity to be involved with the YMCA for the entire month with this, and it's really, really important that as you'll learn tonight, there's things that we need to do to take care of ourselves if we're caregivers, and that would be thanks to the YMCA for that. This as well, what I love about this is, of course, we want to celebrate caregivers and we want to support people, and even if you never get to grab dinner and you just want to go get a discount on your carryout, these restaurants and businesses are available for discounts for Tuesdays throughout the month. The other thing to understand, though, these businesses are taking a bold step in Fishers towards disability awareness, disability inclusion, and supporting this community. So we should be supporting these folks all of the time. So make sure you share this with your friends and neighbors as well. I want to point out, if you happen to be a caregiver for high school age youth here in Fishers, we have a Parents' Night Out, which is in partnership with Christ the Savior Lutheran Church and Outside the Box, that's happening this Friday night. There is at the very bottom of the page is a web link for you to go to. You can also go to ChristTheSaviorLutheran.org and go to their events page, and you will be able to register. Because today is Tuesday and that's happening this Friday, I would make that a priority for your next 24 hours if you would like to get there. So we want to make sure that there's still room for everyone. On the back of your agenda page, something else that we've come across in preparing for March is the Caregiver Action Network hotline. I never knew this existed. It's a wonderful resource for folks who are stressed out, who need somebody to talk to, who might need resources in the community that you're not aware of. So make sure that you understand that phone number is there, and you can go and check more out about the Caregiver Hotline at caregiveraction.org. Next, we're gonna do some real work with caregivers, and first we're gonna invite Kelly Fisher up, and she is with Ball State University in the Department of Psych Sciences, and she is gonna present on caregiver stress management and burnout avoidance. This presentation will focus on the caregiver. Attendees will learn about the nature of stress and its impact on the body, and acquiring skills on how to manage stress. Caregivers will learn about burnout and be able to recognize signs of burnout and develop tools to avoid and or recover from burnout. As we heard from Robin, I know many of you who are caregivers are very, very tired. People who are paid caregivers in the school system and in provider networks are very, very tired. So hopefully we will learn first from Kelly and then later from, go ahead, sorry.
Thanks.
Here's Kelly Fisher.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Kelly Fisher, and I am with the faculty of Ball State University. I teach for the Department of Psychological Science. I also am a licensed mental health counselor. I have a lot of experience providing stress management and burnout training for first responders, both road officers, corrections officers, mental health providers. And in my study of that, I started to learn a lot more about caregivers in general because there was quite a bit of overlap. I too am also a caregiver. I have an adult son who has autism and is blind and is developmentally delayed. So he requires assistance with basically all areas of daily living. So when I speak about this tonight, I want to let you know I am coming from a place that I understand, and I'm going to give you a lot of suggestions and ideas. I don't really expect you to incorporate all of them into your daily life or to make this your full-time occupation of stress management. Hopefully, I'm just going to provide you with some tools to help. I'm also going to give a little plug. I'm starting a performing arts program for children with disabilities here in Fishers that is an extension of a very successful program at Ball State University. So it's called the PRISM Project. And if you want to learn more about it, there are flyers on the table. So sorry about that shameless plug. I want to start with some statistics that I found kind of eye-opening when I came across them recently. The CDC recently reported that 1 in 5 caretakers are in ill health because they're not taking care of themselves. And that's not really meant to be a criticism, that's meant to be an observation of how sometimes caregivers get into a situation where the priority becomes the caregiving, which is understandable, but can get into a situation where their own health becomes way far down on the to-do list. According to the AARP in Indiana, the most recent statistics I could find was that 837,000 people in Indiana are unpaid caregivers. That's 13% of the population of the state, which is a huge number. And I don't want to ignore paid caregivers because certainly what we talk about tonight would apply to either, but this is a statistic about unpaid caregivers. And it matters to me because, as you can see, they provide about 779 million hours of care, which is a lot. And that comes at a value of about $9.5 billion. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about stress, and then I'm going to talk about coping skills, and then I'm going to talk about burnout. I hope it doesn't feel like a ton of information is being poured at you. I just really want to kind of cover some basics. Stress is really any demand that's made on a person that would cause you to adapt or cope or adjust. A lot of times people think of stress as a bad thing, but actually if you had no stress in your life, you probably wouldn't get out of bed because stress motivates you to do things. So a little bit of stress is a good thing. But when we talk about stress, usually what we're talking about is excessive stress or prolonged stress. So we're talking about something that's either really intense and or something that's just been lasting a really long time. And so people that are struggling with that often report feeling tired or drained most of the time. They tend to have lower immunity or feel sick a lot. One study that I read, they actually took caregivers and non-caregivers and gave them a small incision on their arm. And they found that caregivers healed at a much slower rate than non-caregivers, showing that even their body is just not reacting in the same fashion. Caregivers also tend to experience frequent headaches, back pain, muscle aches, and develop changes in sleep and appetite. And again, these aren't intended to be criticisms, it's just observations. And so when we deal with stress, we put into play coping mechanisms. Some coping mechanisms are what we call defensive coping mechanisms, and these are things that might make you feel better or give you a temporary relief of the stressor, but come at a cost because they don't actually address the problem. They simply give you a momentary escape. And so these are things like alcohol or drugs, getting angry, withdrawing, moving into a fantasy situation where you stop to acknowledge the reality of the situation. And again, I don't bring those up as a criticism, it's just more an observation of we tend to go with whatever strategy is easiest to reach towards. And so what I want to do is offer you some more effective strategies, so that perhaps that would be your first line response rather than some of these defensive coping strategies. So instead, what we would look for are active coping mechanisms, and these are things that face and recognize the stressor for what it is, help you avoid some stress, and help you minimize the impact of unavoidable stress. Let's face it, stress is not 100% avoidable in life, so I'm not up here to tell you that I'm going to teach you how to totally eliminate it. But there are some stressors that are avoidable. So with my students, I always talk about time management. If you're always late, and you're stressed out about it, that's actually something that you can make changes to modify so that you're not always late. That's an avoidable stressor. Unavoidable stressors would be things like an unexpected weather event, but there are coping mechanisms we can put into play to help minimize the impact. And some of these active coping mechanisms are things like operating with accurate information. You know, I'm always the kind of person where I don't really want you to sugarcoat it. Just tell me what we're dealing with. I can do a lot better if I know the reality of it. Use or schedule a relaxing ritual each day. And people always say to me, I don't have time for that. Actually, it doesn't have to be a huge ritual. What I like to do is start my day with a favorite song that's on my phone that's kind of my alarm. And so I know while that song's playing, I can just lay in bed and do some relaxing techniques. The song may only last 3 minutes, but it kind of just gives me a 3-minute break. Other active coping mechanisms are things like paying attention to those irrational beliefs. And as caregivers, a lot of times we tell ourselves things that aren't necessarily true. Things like, I must be available all of the time. You know, I know we carry that phone and we want, call me no matter what, but sometimes you need to actually make yourself a little bit unavailable because that's when other people step up to assist. Sometimes we tell ourselves, I'm the only one that can do this, or I'm the only one that can do it the right way. Sometimes you have to let other people do it, even if it's not completely the right way, to delegate some jobs and responsibilities. We also need to develop social supports, and when I talk about developing social supports, one thing that caregivers very consistently report is a feeling of isolation. And that's really easy to happen. For one thing, the nature of our job can kind of make it hard for us to make it to social outings. The other thing is, because we have that caregiver role, sometimes our friends and family who aren't in a similar situation, we start to feel like our lives are kind of going on a separate path. They don't understand me, I don't understand them. I would often have friends tell me, well, I don't tell you about problems in my life because I feel like your problems are worse. I'm like, this isn't a game. I mean, we're not playing like war with cards. It's not who's got the best, situation or the worst situation. I want to hear what your problems are because you're my friend and I care about you. And then also sometimes people either they stop inviting us to things because we're not available as much as other friends. So they assume, well, I won't ask her because every time I ask her, she says no. And so I always say, please just keep asking me because maybe on the 10th time I'll be free and I can find someone to watch my child and go out and have fun. But even if I can't, the fact that you asked me makes a difference. Or maintain those connections. Social connections are really important. And even I find that among the population of caregivers, you can have other people that are in the same role that you're in, and it's still hard to get together. It's still hard to make connections. So it's really important that you try to do your very best to do that. And we have different kinds of friends. So I listed some characteristics that are important to get in that social relationship. You may not find all of these with the same friend, but hopefully you'll find them. You do need those friends that have that emotional concern, those people that want to know how you're doing and genuinely want to know how you're doing. having gotten my degree in counseling psych, I was always surprised at how my classmates would say, "Hey, how you doing?" And then they'd keep walking, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, you're a counseling psychologist. You're supposed to care what my answer is." So now I'm going to follow you and give you a 20-minute story of how I'm doing. But really, you need to have friends that genuinely do care how you're feeling, and you probably have these people in your life. I guess I'm bringing it up more because make sure you're making connections with those people. We also need people that can do kind of that instrumental aid, and by that I mean sometimes you need help with stuff. You know, somebody's sick and you can't get to the store, and you need to have that person that you can call and say, "Hey, can you run by the store and bring me some milk?" It's helpful to have those kinds of people in your life. It's also helpful to have friends that provide information, hopefully accurate information. When I first moved back to Indiana, I didn't know where anything was or when any of the services were, so it was very helpful for me to reconnect with old friends and say, "Hey, where's this?" or "How do I find that?" You also need to have friends that can give you kind of an accurate appraisal of your situation. Many times we're a lot harder on ourselves than we need to be or should be. Many times the voices that we talk in our head, the things we tell ourselves in our head, is way more negative than the reality of the situation. So it's always good to have a friend that, you know, again, I don't need people to sugarcoat it for me, but I know I can call up my sister and say, "Was I the jerk in this situation, or what do you think?" And she'll tell me honestly if I was the jerk, which is sometimes the case. And then also just socializing. We need to have people that we can kind of get away from it all with. Support groups are great, and we're going to talk about those later, but sometimes you just need friends that will talk to you about what happened on the most recent episode of The Real Wives of Fishers, or whatever the show is right now. So sometimes you just need those friends as well. So again, I don't know that you'll find all these people in the same person, but it's good to kind of surround yourself with those types of social supports and make sure that you encourage those connections. Here's one that everybody kind of groans at, but when it comes to coping with stress and managing stress, I cannot emphasize enough taking care of your body. And the way that I look at it is my body's the machine that lets me do what I want to do throughout the day and helps me reach my goals. So it is really important that you put your body a priority. Remember that statistics I gave you earlier, that 1 in 5 caretakers are in ill health. And that a lot of times that's because your doctor's appointments get canceled in preference for someone else's doctor's appointments. Or your medications, maybe we're not going to get those this month because somebody else needs something. Or even just getting to the store or preparing a meal gets, the time for that is no longer accessible. So I do encourage people to work some exercise into the day, and thankfully the YMCA has given you an awesome opportunity to give that a try this month, which is great because in the winter months those outside activities become harder to do. Also, paying attention to what you put into your body. I know, but if you put, yucky gas into your engine, it's not going to run as well, so be thinking about that. And then maintain regular sleep patterns, which don't laugh when I say that, but it really does help if you try to put on a regular schedule, even if you're not getting the full schedule, or even if your caretaking role requires some interruption in your sleep, to try and make it more regular hours every day of the week, including the weekend. Other active coping mechanisms would be things like practicing good time management. And again, we're all very, very busy, but that's a stressor that's avoidable if you can work your day such that you're keeping time to get to where you need to get, and that you're offering yourself opportunities for breaks and that sort of thing. 2 things that I learned in graduate school. The first one is learn how to say no, which some people will tell you I don't know quite fully yet, but I think I do. That means when you know it's too much, it's okay to say no. So when someone asks you something and you know that it's a demand that's just more than you can handle on your plate right now, say no, thank you. No, thank you. You can let them know that you're actually doing them a kindness as well by not accepting something that you're either going to grumble about or do only halfway. So learn how to set that limit. And again, as caretakers, sometimes it's hard for us to do that because it's hard for us to delegate that then to someone else. And then also learn how to say yes. This is another one that's hard for caretakers to do, myself included. When someone offers help, learn how to say yes. Oh, you want to bring dinner on Tuesday night because my son's having surgery that morning? Yes, please do. I don't like mushrooms. Whatever it is, learn how to say yes. And sometimes people will say, well, I think she just offered to be nice. Go ahead and say yes. She won't do it again. You'll teach her a valuable lesson. So learn how to say that yes and accept help. You'd be surprised at how many people are around you that want to help and really don't know how, or they've offered and been turned down, and so then they don't offer again. And then laugh. In our home, a sense of humor is definitely a must. So we were lucky enough to live right next door to a neighbor who also had a son with autism, and it was at a time when both of our boys were way past the age where they should have been potty trained, but were not potty trained. And we would visit one another a lot, but we would always call first and say, what's the conditions at your house? And then my friend might say, well, we got kind of a Category 2 storm here right now. You might wait 15 minutes before you come over. And so it was a great joke, and we'd wait 15 minutes and then come over. And, you know, we weren't making fun of our kids. It was just, this is the reality, and we still want you to come over, but we might have to do some cleanup first. Okay. This is the topic that can be kind of hard to talk about, which is burnout. And burnout is not something that was initially identified among caregivers. It was initially identified among first responders. But we discovered that it's very common among professional caregivers, people in that caregiving roles, like social workers, counselors, residential care facility members. But it's also very common among people who are unpaid caregivers. And basically, burnout is defined as a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion. And it's caused by excessive and prolonged stress. So burnout is what can happen when the stressors have gone on a really long time and your coping mechanisms aren't working anymore. One of the reasons that I offered a lot of healthy coping strategies is because I look at coping mechanisms like tools in a toolbox, and you're building a house. So it's great if you show up and you go, I have a tool, and it's a hammer, and it's a great hammer. And I'll say, well, that'll work, but it's not going to work for everything. So while you're building the house, there's lots of wonderful things you can do with the hammer, but if the hammer is the only tool that you have, it may work really well for a while, but it's going to start to break, and it's going to stop doing any kind of effective job. And so with burnout, even if you have a coping mechanism that works, remember that the more that you have, it's just like more tools in your toolbox so that they aren't likely to wear out. So what are some signs of burnout? People who are experiencing burnout often say things like, every day is a bad day. They start to feel like caring about their work or their home life seems like a waste of time. Like, why am I trying? They feel exhausted all the time. They start to say that most of their day is spent on tasks that are mind-numbingly dull or just overwhelming, and they start to feel like nothing that they're doing is appreciated or makes a difference. Now, a lot of times people don't want to talk about this when they get to this point, and that's what I worry about, because caregivers will start to withdraw, and you'll say, "Are you okay?" And they'll say, "Yeah, I'm okay." "You want to talk about it?" "No, I don't want to talk about it." Mostly that's because as a caregiver, if they get to that point, they're scared to admit it because they're afraid that other people will interpret that as, "I don't love," like particularly family caregivers, "I don't love my mom that I'm taking care of anymore. I don't love my son." Or you'll interpret it that I can't do the job. And I can, it's just too hard for me right now. So I always try to keep in contact with my friends who are caregivers, because burnout can happen to anybody, to the best of us. And when it starts to happen, that's a lot of times when people will withdraw the most, or where you'll actually hear any kind of complaints stopping, because then they feel like, "I don't want to say anything to you because you'll say, 'Oh, well, you can't take care of your son anymore,'" which isn't the case. So what I like to do is offer people hope. If you're in that position where you're actually experiencing burnout, and it can happen again to the best of us, there are things that we can do to help, but it takes all of us. One thing is to kind of slow down. Try to cut back on whatever commitments and activities that you can, and give yourself time to rest, reflect, and heal. I used to be the president of the Autism Society chapter in New Orleans. And you'd have people come to volunteer, and they'd be great volunteers and active volunteers, and you'd start to see that their home life was becoming overwhelming. And I would always tell them, there's a time. There's a time for you to be here and do this, and right now is not the time for you, and that's okay. It's okay to slow down and say, I have to reduce some of these commitments. I have to turn my focus on me and get back into my caregiving role the way I want to be. And that's the thing. Most people who are caregivers who are experiencing burnout don't want to be in that place, and they still care about the person they're taking care of. So get rid of the extra stuff. And there's a lot of extra stuff that in your head you don't think is extra. I'm sorry, but those leaves can wait. They don't have to be up 5 minutes after they hit the grass. So give yourself that time to rest and reflect. The second thing, which can be really hard to do, is get support. So turn to people around you and say, I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. Okay? You're going to be surprised, because there's probably a lot of people in your lives right now who are kind of waiting for your go-ahead or your direction on how they can step in and assist. So it's really important that you give them that opportunity, and know that there's not going to be judgment there, that it doesn't mean you don't care. It just means that it's a little too much right now. I also suggest to people that they reevaluate their goals and priorities. There may be things that you think must be done that are really not that crucial. And there may also be things that are getting dropped to the bottom of the priority list that should probably go to the top. So, I say, if you have a regular monthly support group meeting, don't pencil that into your calendar, ink that into your calendar. That needs to be moved up on the priority list if that's something that is helpful to you. So, and again, those things that you think have to be done, so what if I don't get the Easter decorations out this year? You think anybody's going to care? We'll live. Life will go on. We can still celebrate. And again, sometimes it helps to have someone outside of your situation give you feedback and evaluate your situation, help you understand that how you can readjust those priorities so that everybody benefits. So I did want to also leave you with some ideas of resources. Obviously, the ones that are listed on your agenda for tonight are awesome ones, but there are also resources online. USA.gov has resources specific to caregivers. And then there's also the National Center on Caregiving. As well as the National Respite Network. Beyond that, I would say a great way to find local resources would be to connect with groups in your community that serve the population that is affecting your family. So if you're taking care of a loved one with a mental illness, you might reach out to the National Alliance for Mental Illness, or NAMI, who has a monthly support group right here in Fishers. If you have a loved one who is struggling with autism, you might reach out to the Autism Society of Indiana, because those are actually people in your community. Other places you can find local support groups, I always suggest to people to check out hospitals. Hospitals often have great lists. And again, those groups that I mentioned before will often know where the support groups are in your area, and local libraries as well. So there are ways to connect, even if you may not know where to start. Those are some starting points. So again, I guess the most important thing for me to tell you is, do I expect you to take all of this and put it into play tonight? Of course. No. What I would hope is that if you take even just a few of these tools away and say, this is something that I can do, or this is something that I have thought of, and even if you need to use me as an excuse, I have to tell you no because Kelly Fisher told me to. That's fine. I'll be the bad guy because they don't know who I am or how to find me. But even if it's just a couple of things that you can put into place, and I always tell people, because they'll say, it's too much, I can't, my life's too busy already. I always say, even little changes can make big differences. So you don't have to make huge lifestyle changes, even small changes. And again, I absolutely know where I'm coming from when I say this. So hopefully this was helpful. And thank you for letting me come to speak a little bit on stress management.
Thank you, Kelly, for all your information. It's very helpful. I want to present our next speaker, Collinia Corapati. She is a licensed mental health counselor with the Anxiety Relief Center here in Fishers. And she has been offering biosound therapy, and she has worked for providing services for in private practice, schools, homes, and prisons prior to opening up the Anxiety Relief Center. And she understands the importance of integrative healthcare, community relationships, and how various ways of healing each other from illness. So she is going to talk today about caregiver stress with using mindfulness to incorporate mindfulness in your everyday life. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Collinia. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kalina Corapati, and as Cecilia mentioned, I actually am the owner of the Anxiety Relief Center, and I am all about mindfulness. So I'm going to speak with you guys today a little bit more hands-on about how you might be able to incorporate mindfulness into your day-to-day activities. I understand that as a caregiver, it can be very stressful, and as Kelly discussed, it's very difficult to fit in different times to just allow self-care and just to be able to relax. So the good news about mindfulness is that we can actually start to see some really awesome results even in as little as 1 to 2 minutes, which I'll show you today. Okay? So I am a licensed mental health counselor, and I have been a therapist for about 15 years. I can remember my days back in grad school learning about mindfulness, and I actually happen to be very hyper and energetic, although you might not be able to tell that about me because I'm 2 weeks getting over a cold today, so I'm a little bit raspy on the voice, but generally I'm very hyper. So when I heard about mindfulness, I was like, yeah, I'm going to opt out of that. Thank you for the information. But as I continued on in my career, I started to realize that this really is a thing that helps people, and it's something that helps me today. Back in 2015, my mother actually had open heart surgery, and I was able to be a caregiver for her for about the 2 months that she was healing at my home. So I do have experience as a caregiver, and I'm glad that it was brief because it was very exhausting, and I really just want to speak to all of you that are caregiving in a variety of circumstances, just knowing that it is very difficult and it does take a lot of energy, and I just praise you all for the efforts that you guys put into that. So with that being said, I actually offer something called biosound therapy, which is a technology-assisted mindfulness. So when you hear that phrase, it's probably not a phrase that you've heard a lot, but for those of you that are starting to think about mindfulness as I'm speaking to you about it, some of us just feel like I can't do mindfulness. Some of you might be kind of high energy like me, or you've tried it and felt like it didn't help you. Some of my clients have actually tried it and told me they felt more anxious with whatever type of mindfulness that they've done. So with biosound therapy, it's actually a combination of music therapy, sound massage, video content, all while I'm actually helping you with biofeedback. So biofeedback is the process of just physiologically looking at what's going on in the body. So when we're actually doing mindfulness in my office, we can actually see real changes in the body through HeartMath technology. So I didn't bring that today, and without further ado, I will head into talking about mindfulness, but I want to let you guys know that mindfulness is measurable, and we can see those changes in the body when we're using that for small amounts of time. So I want you guys to just think for a second, how do I currently incorporate mindfulness into my day right now? So just take a second and think about that. I apologize if my silences make people uncomfortable, but I do think that we just need to slow things down. It's been a long day for everybody, and just to be able to really think about how we're incorporating that into our lives, because it is super important. So what do I hope to learn today about mindfulness as a form of stress management? I want to talk to you guys about all the different ways that mindfulness can be incorporated. So I hope that our time together today is just spent productively, and that you guys can take something away from this. So I'd like to start with my favorite quote: problems are not the problem, coping is the problem. I don't know if any of you guys have heard this before, but there are a lot of different problems that each of us in the room are going through, and coping is kind of the key to just trying to manage the stress that is associated with whatever each of us are dealing with. Okay, so the definition of mindfulness is placing your attention on purpose in a particular way that allows the present moment to fully exist. So it's the space between what has happened as well as what will happen. So we want to look at attention when we're speaking of mindfulness, just being able to really focus on what's going on just in this moment. We want to be able to use our intention to just stay on the moment that we're actually on right now. We want to have an attitude of just being open and not judging what's going on in this situation, just literally being right here. And that can be very difficult because with our phones and technology, we're constantly hit with a lot of different information that can just make it very difficult just to be present. So mindfulness can happen in a variety of activities, environments, and contexts. So there's lots of different ways that we can be mindful, even when you're just listening to me today talk. It's okay to just kind of listen to the words that I'm saying and just to think about what I'm trying to tell you. So I don't believe that mindfulness is just a trend. I know it's something that a lot of people are talking about more recently, but this is actually a picture that I took of at Barnes & Noble's. There was actually a area in the book section that was about mindfulness and self-care, and I was super excited to see this, and I do recognize it is something that people are talking about, but it's been going on for a long time. People have found mindfulness just to be very relaxing and to be able to just allow any physical or mental symptoms that we have just to be able to kind of float away. Mindfulness has a lot of health benefits. It can lower blood pressure, it can reduce pain, it can stabilize your weight, balance your emotions, improve your sleep. There's just a lot of different ways that being present in the moment can just help us be still and just feel whatever it is that we're feeling, even if those emotions are negative. So what we're going to talk about today is very practical ways that we can actually be mindful through exercise. So I know that everybody knows that we're supposed to all be exercising and it's good for you, but there are different ways that there are different exercises that allow us to be more mindful. I'm sure many of you, when you think of this, you probably think of yoga. Yoga is a way that we can exercise our body in a way that we're kind of paying attention to the way that we are feeling in our body and being able to follow the directions of whatever types of poses that we're doing. It's also easy to just kind of run through exercises without being mindful, to be able to just feel like, okay, I'm going to get this exercise done and I'm going to hurry up and do it. And that's not really mindful in the exercise. So when we talk about mindful exercises, we want to talk about just being able to really be present with that. Same goes for Pilates. If we're running, we want to be able to pay attention to nature, to trees, to where we're going, to how we're feeling. So we want to be able to exercise in a way that we're actually feeling what that's like, whether it's walking, swimming, biking, stretching, karate, whatever it is, okay? So we're going to talk about mindfulness apps. That's something that hopefully many of you are already using. My favorite is, of course, Insight Timer. That's my favorite because it actually tracks your productivity and allows you to do lots of different types of meditations. So there's actually guided meditations, there's meditations for different types of symptoms. For instance, if you have a headache or maybe you're experiencing grief, there are actually ways on Insight Timer to actually search for meditation specific to whatever symptom that you're experiencing. Calm is a similar app that people use. Headspace, I'm not quite as familiar with either of those, but I know that a lot of people are commonly using those apps. And I highly recommend, if you haven't tried that, as a caregiver, being able to download those apps and just kind of playing around with it. A lot of them are user-friendly, and most of them are free to start or have limited amounts of free exercises that you can do on them. Another app called Stigma is a really great mental health app. This app actually allows you to track what your emotions are, which is, again, a sense of mindfulness, just to be able to check in with yourself and see, how am I feeling today? What's going on with me? It also has availabilities to connect with other people with your protected information. It's basically being kept to yourself. So you can actually have relationships on the app and letting people know how you're feeling, what you're going through, problem solving, coping, things like that with other people in a protected form. I also want to mention Biosound Technologies. That's another free app that offers a lot of music therapy with binaural beats and lots of meditation specifically for sleep, pain management, and a variety of different frequencies that is helpful. Ways to be mindful individually. Many of you hopefully are journaling or cooking is one of my favorites. Prayer, art, mindful eating, pets is another one. Cooking, gardening, doing breathing exercises, which we'll do here in a little bit. Adult coloring is another thing that can be very mindful for us. Aromatherapy is one of my favorites. So being able to just be present with different Young Living essential oils is what I use, and different scents can kind of help you to feel mindful with whatever it is going on. Music is another one that I think probably is a very common way that people are mindful. I know, Kelly, you mentioned that you listen to different music in the morning. I think that for caregivers, just being able to just key into whatever songs you're listening to can just be really stress relieving. So finally, I want to talk about meditation. I think that when we think about the word mindfulness, we think about meditation commonly. We talked about some different apps that we can use for meditation. There's also different types of meditation. So we can actually listen to things like guided imagery, which is the process of actually listening to people instructing you on different ways to relax. So a lot of times they're kind of walking you through something specific, and that can kind of help you be present with whatever it is that you're feeling. Body scans, that's one of my favorite things to do, and this is actually a meditation that specifically will kind of start from the top of the head going all the way down to the feet, and it'll kind of walk you through just gaining greater awareness in the body. So just in closing, there's a lot of different ways that we can be mindful, and I hope that a lot of you guys are potentially open to trying some of these things out, because I feel like as a caregiver, these things will definitely help you just to be able just to be present with so many different things going on. So with that being said, we're just gonna do a short breathing activity. So I just wanna let you know that I do a lot of different breathing exercises in my day-to-day practice, and I think that there are a lot of different ways that we can incorporate breathing exercises into our everyday. With that being said, we're going to do the most simple breathing exercise that tends to bring some sense of mindfulness and stress relief to most people that I do work with. So if you just want to go ahead and maybe get a little bit comfortable in your chair, if there's anything that you're holding, you could probably put that down and just decide to relax a little bit. So what I'm going to have you do is go ahead and take your right hand and place it on your stomach. And we're going to breathe in through our nostrils as if we're filling up our stomach for about 4 seconds. And then we're going to go ahead and breathe out for about 4 seconds. And we want to do both of the breathing in and out in a way that moves our stomach with our hand. So I'm going to show you guys what this will look like first. So it's going to look like this. So you see how I kind of blew a little bit of that stale air out, and I was also really breathing in and trying to pull that air down into my stomach. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start. We're going to go in and out. Let's go again. In and out. So we only did that for a couple of seconds, and if you notice, you should start to feel a little bit more present. This is something that we can do just at our desk if we're at work, if we're running around in the car, just doing a simple breathing exercise. Continuing on with that, just a couple more rounds. Usually I have a lot of my clients that just do it for about a minute or two, and typically that can just help to relieve stress. Any questions about the breathing exercise? So I want you to think about one thing that you can do just to feel motivated about trying to incorporate some greater sense of mindfulness into your life if you feel led. we're going to actually just watch a short video that's about mindfulness that kind of talks a little bit more about what I'm talking about with you today.
What if there existed a magic pill that can improve your health, help you live longer, build creativity, help discover your true self, and ultimately make you happy? How much would you pay for a pill like this? What if it were free? Well, that pill exists, and it's called mindfulness.
We have, on average, 60,000 thoughts a day. Now the trouble is, most of the thoughts are either about the past or worried about the future. Our minds can often be our worst enemy, and negative thought patterns can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and in turn will affect our physical health.
To demonstrate how little control you have over your mind, try this. Close your eyes and think of a blue lion. Can you do it? Now do it again, but this time, close your eyes and think of a blue lion, and only of a blue lion for 1 minute. Don't let any other thought interrupt. I bet you can't.
Why is that? Well, it's the nature of the mind to wander. And you will notice that as soon as you attempt to concentrate only on the blue lion, within a few seconds another thought will pop into your mind, like, this exercise is silly, I'm hungry, or what is this all about? It's because our mind never ceases to throw random thoughts our way.
Mindfulness helps us to take back a little of that control. It helps to develop tools, allowing us to not only notice these thoughts as they appear, but also allow us to choose the way we respond to them.
Imagine standing in front of a dog with a bone in your hand, waving it left to right. Then throw the bone. What will the dog do?
Now imagine standing in front of a lion, again waving the bone in its face, and then you throw it. What do you think the lion will do?
The lion might attack or might not. The point is the fundamental difference between the mind of a lion and a dog. The bone represents all of reality to the dog. The lion can see beyond the bone and has a choice on how to respond to the situation. Who is the king of the jungle? Who is the king of the inner jungle? The brain is a muscle and it can grow. Just as our muscles in the body need to be exercised, so do the muscles in the brain. Mindfulness is like doing a set of mental push-ups. As a thought enters your mind, this is the beginning of the push-up. The completion of the push-up is 1. Being aware of the thought without judgment, and 2. Bringing your attention back to the breath. It's that simple. The next thought that pops into your mind is the beginning of the next mental push-up.
Scientists have shown that just after 8 weeks of practice, the parts of the brain responsible for the positive stuff, like creativity, emotional intelligence, and happiness, physically can change shape and grow.
The amygdala, responsible for the fight or flight mechanisms related to stress, depression, and addictive behaviors, actually shrinks during this time.
The scientific evidence is so strong now that mindfulness is being employed in places like Google, Bank of America, the US Marines, and the National Health Service.
More profoundly, simple mindfulness exercises can give you a new lens in which to see yourself and the outside world without the ego, and also your relationship with the present moment.
It has nothing to do with religion, and it's helping us to enjoy life, be happy, and ultimately allow us to help others. Visit renaissancepodcast.com to find out more. Be mindful.
Under my resources and recommendations, my favorite book on mindfulness, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It's an amazing book just that explains so many of just concepts regarding mindfulness. It's a very philosophical book. I love it a lot. So if anybody's looking for a good read, as well as the next book, that's another book that I like a lot. The Center for Mind-Body Medicine is a great resource, mindful.org. Actually wearing a necklace that is a Kumoso design, and this is actually a specially engineered necklace that you can actually use to do breathing exercises. So there's a lot of different gadgets and technology that are currently coming out that are helping us with mindfulness because it is a little harder than it seems sometimes. I also referenced heartmath.org if anybody's interested in learning more about biofeedback and being able to measure how mindfulness is creating stress relief for people. Biosound Healing is the research on the type of therapy that I do, as well as my website and the podcast that I showed. So thank you for your time. Oh, sure. Absolutely. Mhm. That's actually one of the subjects that I'm most interested in, and I do treat a lot of people with PTSD, so that's a great question. I don't believe that there's a big difference between what's going on in the physical body and what's going on mentally, but I do feel like when we're having those more intense feelings of anxiety, being able to know some of these breathing exercises can be super helpful. But it also can be more helpful preventatively. So again, today what we're talking about is more the practice of trying to get mindfulness going, because some of my clients often report that they don't have those more intense symptoms that they were having, which a lot of them are related to PTSD, because they're able to preventatively calm their body. So they're kind of creating a new sense of homeostasis so that when something happens that triggers them or something is stressful, it doesn't feel as strong as before they were kind of taking on that practice of being able to just learn, these things upset me, and then my body does this, and then this is what I do. There's also that kind of prevention piece of the practice that I think can be really helpful. But did that answer your question? I can go on and on forever about that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It absolutely does work. Mhm. Any other questions? Sure. I actually thought about doing the activity with mindful eating. So sometimes when I've done this activity in the past, I actually pass out snacks, which sounds really fun, right? And you're actually going through the process of noticing the texture of your food, the smell of your food, the shape of your food, and also eating it slowly, kind of just engaging all of those senses versus what I sometimes do, which is watch TV while I'm eating in a hurry. So it is kind of a practice that can bring on more mindfulness, especially as you start to do it each meal, preferably. Okay, thank you.
For those of you that know me, you may find it funny that I've actually tried to be quiet at some point. And so for those of you who haven't, back table, have not incorporated mindfulness into your world, let me tell you that it's okay to do it wrong, right? I mean, don't beat yourself up for trying something new and your thoughts going 5 million different directions. It is really a beautiful thing to learn just simply how to breathe, and I so appreciate you guys being here tonight. Let's give them a round of applause again. Thank you guys so much. The next thing we're going to talk about, which I am so excited about, is the relationship between the community, some provider supports in our neighborhood, and our first responders. I've had the opportunity in my work to be involved with a similar project in Indianapolis, and when the Fishers EMS, all the first responders, reached out to us and said, "Hey, what can we do in this community?" I was delighted to be a part of that, and so we're going to have you guys come up and talk a little bit about those efforts. This is a very new effort of ways that first responders can best support our community of folks with disabilities and unique challenges. So thank you guys so much for being here.
So any idea how I can get these slides on? We brought these at the last minute.
While they're getting that going, Lieutenant Josh Cameron, I'm the EMS duty officer of the city of Fisher. And I will say, I really appreciated the presentations that happened before us. You guys know anything about EMS? Yeah, sorry, they're seeing it.
Hold, please. Oh, stand over here.
Yeah, here, while they're getting that.
Sorry to pinch your back.
Nope, you're good. I'm used to it. With EMS, every time the bells go off, we go and meet somebody on their worst day. And so when we go and see these people in crisis, we have a soft heart for the caregivers that are out there. And just know that you may have that hard conversation with us, right? And we're going to make sure that if you are isolated, if you are burnout, we're going to make those referrals. So I really appreciate you guys presenting that. And I hope you guys take advantage of everything that's available within our community, because there is a lot going on, support groups and neighbors that are interested in helping. So.
Hi, I'm Steve Davison. I'm the EMS Division Chief, and along with Josh and two of our other paramedics, we started up a program in January that's called the EMS Duty Officer Program. And this all originated back in 2014 when we were tasked by Mayor Fadness to look at how can we change the way that we respond to behavioral health emergencies. And if any of you know the background behind the whole mental health program within Fishers, it's really dynamic, and we're really happy to be part of it. For years and years, we've been tasked with just running on emergency runs and being reactive rather than proactive. So it was refreshing for us to take a look at behavioral health emergencies and figure out how we can prevent those runs from happening in the first place. Last year alone, we did over 410 responses to behavioral health incidents. So in a city of Fishers, where our average runs per year, we're at about 6,000 runs, that's a fairly significant percentage of runs that are strictly related to behavioral health. So we looked at just re-imaging how we run that program. And through the help of a lot of professionals within the community, we got specialized training, crisis incident management training for both adults and pediatric patients. We've had ESPERT, we've had, you name it, we've had it. So we've done a lot of specific training to really help us deal with those emergencies. So we're going to give you just a brief overview of what it is we do, how our program works, and hopefully how we can change things in the community. Jess, you want to take this part here?
Sure. So if you ever see this vehicle around,
Well, once it gets back from the body shop.
there may have been a deer incident
Yeah.
on a call. So
Yeah,
anyway.
116th by Gray Eagle, you got to watch out for the deer. They were on a run, big deer comes across the street. First deer was okay, they always travel in twos. The second deer didn't fare so well. But
So what we do, here I'll get in the microphone. What we do is we are part of the initial response now with the Fishers Police Department for crisis intervention. So you will see us come to the scene to help de-escalate those situations, do a medical evaluation, and really what we're working towards is alternative transportation. One of the things that we found were a limiting factor for patients receiving help is the financial issue, okay? So what was happening, the old response model in our reactive way was just to take those patients to the emergency room, right? Which ended up causing them to have a bill for upwards of $3,000 for just walking through the door, okay? And sometimes, and not every time, they would receive a behavioral health evaluation, and usually they were sent on their way, okay? So what we are trying to do is make sure that we understand truly what's going on in the situation and make sure that we take patients to the proper location. Usually we work with Aspire and Community Behavioral Health, as well as St. V's Stress Center, and make sure that we are taking patients directly there. And just thank goodness we have the support of our city We do that at currently no charge for the patients. We do not receive reimbursement for alternative transport locations at this time, so.
So when you look at how our transports went last year, and I have a slide a little bit later on this, but when you look at one of the tasks of the EDOs is to get there and do the medical evaluation and bypass the emergency room. So when you look at the total number of patients that we evaluated, kept them from going to the emergency room, we realized probably about a $573,000 savings potentially to the patients for not having to go to the emergency room. And that doesn't include transportation costs from the scene to the hospital. So that's a pretty significant savings just on the small amount that we've been doing, and it's the right thing to do for the patient. What's really neat about our program is not only do we work independently out in the field, along with the police department too, we also have a really good relationship with Hamilton Southeastern Schools, Brooke Lawson, who's the director of mental health services over there, and the school resource officers. So when we run with pediatric patients or students in the HSC system who are having behavioral health incidents on that scene, you know, not only do we take care of that initial crisis issue, but we also then refer them, after we've talked to the parents, back over to the schools so that the school counselors can become involved, as well as their private practice psychologist, if they do in fact have one. But it just gives us some reassurance that nobody's going to fall through the cracks. So by involving the schools in the system as well, we ensure that there's going to be a follow-up on the behavioral health side to make sure they get referred to the right services. Again, this started back in 2012 when we were at a conference. We initially talked about this program. It evolved with the help of the mayor and the rest of the city and the council to get to where we are today, which is our first year of service, where it was phenomenal, the great amount of work we did that first year. We did a community needs assessment and kind of decided, well, how can we best serve the community? And we initially looked at this program, and there's actually different facets to our program in addition to the behavioral health part. We will do follow-ups on patients who are being discharged from the hospital who may in fact need additional resources to be successful in their recovery. There's nothing worse than somebody coming home by themselves from the hospital. They don't know what their discharge orders really read because, you know, when somebody learns that they're getting out of the hospital, that's all they think about. I'm getting out of the hospital, you know, blah, 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 blah. The nurses are telling them what they need to do, but that's not really soaking in. So by the time they get home and they have a big binder of instructions, that's a little overwhelming. So we work with them to make sure they can, you know, understand all those instructions, that they have their medications as is outlined in the discharge orders, and we make sure that they don't have any repetitive medicines or medicines that are no longer current for what they need to do. So we were successful in that. We also did behavioral health or follow-up on congestive heart failure patients to make sure that they were successful. But after all the analysis that we did, really what it boiled down to for our service is more the behavioral health side. And when you talk about a community paramedicine program, which this is, the neat thing about it is you tailor it for your community. And while we in Fishers have seen that, you know, behavioral health is a big issue for us, and that's pretty much where we're concentrating the main portion of our services, we're also still being able to look at the different services for people in the community. Noblesville is getting ready to start a program up there. They're going to emulate what we do. Pretty much, you know, the same EDO program, following up on behavioral health. But again, they have an older population up there, and some of their needs may be slightly different. But it's just a new way of providing emergency services by being proactive rather than reactive.
And I won't bore you with the big circle, but just know that we continually look at what's going on in our community. We continue to learn from all the service providers in our area and how that we can serve you guys better. And we brought people in from the community as well to talk about what we can do better as a department and how we can respond and make sure that people are being referred to the appropriate resources. So, go ahead.
Skip this one.
Yep. There we go. Yeah. So, one of the things that we looked at when we initially worked with the Indiana State Department of Health with their epidemiology department was, as Chief was talking about, is some of the health issues that were going on. But I can tell you right now, the number one things that were on our list were behavioral health related, okay? And I will tell you in 2012, we didn't know what to do. we didn't know how to tackle that project, and it took quite a bit of time. But we did see an opportunity for us as first responders to be part of that continuum of care and help wrap around these patients that we see every day, right? Because we saw the hurt out there. This isn't a new problem. We've been dealing with it all along. We just didn't know exactly how to help patients.
Well, when you think of firefighters, you know, you run to the house, you put the fire out, you go back to the fire station, kids come by, you know, it's a lot of fun. On the emergency medical side, you know, we go on heart attacks, seizures, you name it. But behavioral health, when we looked at it, is a very small portion of our education as first responders. So that's why we had to go out and pretty much work on our own type of program, our own education program, to train our people to go out and respond on behavioral health emergencies and to be able to be effective at it. So with that, you know, we learned a lot. And now, you know, it's amazing to see the transition of our personnel from like, we're going to do what, to we really see a need for this, and it's really made a difference in our patients. And it's just, I've been involved with this since 1978, but it was just a really neat thing for me to be involved with, just because we get to really see patients now. We don't see them at their worst. Sometimes we do, but most of the time we get to see them get better. And that's where, for us, it's so refreshing to be able to see the other side of that whole patient. And, you know, I just can't say enough about how much I really like this program. Community stakeholders, we've involved hospitals, mental health organizations, the schools, faith-based organizations. In fact, I think we've got a meeting coming up later this month with the faith-based organizations to work more with them and their program on how we can work together to, drive some patients to them that may benefit from their services as well.
So go ahead. Some of the challenges that we've had along the way, obviously funding, some legal issues that we had to work through, the training like Chief talked about. We've really had to revamp how we train first responders to deal with patients out in the community. Access to patient data, which is one of the biggest things. And so we worked with state legislators on Senate Bill 359. One of the biggest things that we need when we respond to somebody in crisis is their safety plan, right? And so that's been the hardest thing to gain access to because of HIPAA law. But we finally got that passed. We're working with hospitals, social workers to try to figure out how that program's going to work, but we are going to be able to have access to patient safety plans, which I think is going to be huge for us responding to these.
Well, and we were actually able to sit down with community behavioral health workers, and they taught us, trained us how to work through developing a safety plan with patients too. So we can do that on the scene if we have to. We're also working on some other neat plans where we will hopefully in the near future implement a telepsych or telehealth program out in the field that rather than having to take somebody into the hospital, our goal is to bring them up on our iPad, have them talk with a counselor or a social worker or a physician while we're on the scene and not even have to bother taking them in the hospital. Get them an appointment while we're on the scene, make sure that they have a way to get to that appointment the next day or 2 days, and take care of everything while we're there in the house without even having to take them out of the house. We've had some challenges with that, but I think we're working through those, and hopefully later this year, early next year, we can get that piece in place as well.
So we talked about the educational needs. You'll see through there some of the things that we've gone through. Adult and youth CIT, which is the crisis intervention team. Suicide prevention, QPR, so question, persuade, refer, and we do those right on scene. ESPERT, de-escalation techniques, which I will tell you, the good thing about us going out in the community is sometimes, and I will tell you it's not the case here in the city of Fishers, but sometimes police are seen as the enemy or not trustworthy in some of these patients. And I will tell you that the police officers that we respond with appreciate while we're on the scene, that we have that level of trust with those patients, and we're actually able to have some very deep conversations, and I think getting a truer understanding of what's going on in the situation with patients. So.
Along with all this comes the need for us to look at data and how the data that we bring in can really change how we do our program. So we use a couple different things. We use our EMS software. We use the initial crisis EMS call. We look at a new software that's going to be coming soon to the community that called Julata, that we're going to be able to take all of our partners anywhere that we have them and tie in what all of their abilities are and what it is they can do, so that when we do have a patient, we'll plug them into our system, we'll put what the needs are, and then it shoots out a blast to all these organizations who then can say, okay, I'll take this person, we'll make sure that they have transportation, and I'll make sure that Meals on Wheels can take them the meals. We'll make sure that we can go and feed the dog while they're in the hospital. So this is going to be another piece for us to kind of take our program a little bit further and to be able to coordinate all those services in a much better fashion and more effective. We do in-home visits, we do personal calls. We're not doing the automated phone calls anymore, and we're working on our patient outcome reports. It's been really difficult for us to get outcome reports because of the hospital's unwillingness to really let go of some of that information. So again, through recent legislation, then we can hopefully get better information from the hospitals so that we can look what our outcomes actually are doing. Police reporting, total immediate detentions, recidivism rates. Our goal is to decrease the amount of patients that they're having to immediately detain in any given year, and more importantly, make sure that none of those are repetitive cases where they've gone and had multiple times. So again, the key is to getting them to the right services. Here's a little bit of a history, and this was only through half of 2019. But like I said, we ended up at the end of last year at about 410. We're already far and above. For the first 2 months this year, I think we're up to 95 as of yesterday. So keeping busy. Senate Bill 359 just goes over how that works with public safety to get the safety plan and work with patients on how they can decrease their stress on the scene. Here's our numbers for last year. 410 behavioral, 98 were 18 or younger, 312 19 and above. Suicidal ideations, 24 18 or younger, 48 19 and above. Unfortunately, there were 10 successful suicides last year. Our goal is to get that to 0. And one of the neat things that we're going to start with the health department is going back and doing a retroactive study on suicides within the Fishers area so that we can see if there are any common denominators in any of the suicides that we need to start looking at within the community. So that's pretty exciting. Hopefully we won't have any, but it'll be good if we can start looking at that. And then immediate detentions, 66 that were 18 or younger and 140, 19 and above. So again, we're just trying to decrease the numbers. We're fully expecting to have an increase before we start seeing a decrease. But so far, it's going pretty good. And I think, is that it pretty much? For the future, we talked about evolving training needs. Josh, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So one of the things that we continue to learn about is what all is available in our community. So as we continue to find out what's available, we'll do training for not just the EMS duty officers that are responding on crisis, but actually all the paramedics and EMTs that work within Fishers, so that they can better understand and really honestly have that empathy for patients as we go out. So
we are taking on the task of really learning about autism and the autistic community within Fishers. We've had challenges with some of the interactions that we've had in the community and trying to get services for some of the patients. So with Kelly's help, we're working, and Councilman Coble heading up the committee for that so that we can really learn how we can better help the Autism and Dementia Society within the Fishers area. So it's a big learning curve for us, but we're going to get there.
And I will just say, before we get to the questions, just know, and I know it's stressful as a care provider. I definitely have empathy. I've done it before myself. Just know that you have a partner in this, okay? So when we respond, when you need an advocate, we're going to help, okay? We understand that the health care system can be difficult to navigate sometimes. I will tell you, we will not always have the answers, so be patient with us, but we will fight alongside you, okay? So.
And one of the other benefits of this EDO program is the relationship that we build with the patients and the families. And, we've gotten to the point now to where I think that a lot of the kids who have autism that we've dealt with so far have gotten to know Joe and Josh and Zippy, as we call him, Mike Zidell. And have gotten, they'll bring cookies by the stations. And I think that by developing that relationship and the patients getting to know our people, then when something does happen, it's a familiar face that they see when we get there. And that has greatly helped reduce a lot of the stress on the scene. And just the way that we learned how to respond in general. You know, in the past, we'd come screaming up with red light sirens, a big fire truck, an ambulance. We get out with all of our stuff and come up to the house and, can we help you? And it's like, that's not the best way to really deal with people who are having some issues. So again, you know, it's really, really changing the way that we respond to those emergencies. And I'm really happy and really proud of the city of putting their effort behind this. So if there's any questions that we can answer, please feel free to jump in there. Mm-hmm. Are you talking about proactive ahead of time, or what happens? Right. Right. Usually, right. Mm-hmm. Well, right now, we have the special needs database, which is out on the city website, where you can go and you can register your address and any type of special needs that you may have within your household. And you can put details on there. It's a secure database, so the only people that get the information are us. And that information in turn goes over to the Hamilton County Dispatch Center, so that when we respond to that address, we know that, you know, John Doe, who lives at 123 Easy Street, has a person with a cognitive disorder or whatever. And that kind of gives us a heads up when we're going into that scene. In addition, you can always feel free to give our office a call, fire headquarters. The number is pretty readily available. If you want it, it's 317-595-3200, and you can ask for the EMS division. And what you can do then is you can speak with myself or one of the EDOs. Tell us that you'd like us to come by and make a visit. We'll schedule a visit with you guys, and we'll stop by and visit and get the details and help you put the information into the database if you need to. Now, the county is getting ready to really launch a new program out there that's going to kind of take the place of what we've been doing locally with this special needs database that we have. I think that they'll be having an announcement in the next month or two on this, but it's a system on steroids, basically, of what we've done. So you log in on your phone, you put all your information in, and then it takes your geolocation and it knows where you are if you were to call 911. And it was really funny. It happened the other day. Something happened to my phone. I hit like the emergency by accident, and it's making this noise, and I'm trying to turn it off, and I can't get it turned off. All of a sudden, I get a text from Hamilton County Dispatch that says, "Are you in need of services? Do you have an emergency?" And then they call me right after that. I'm going, no, I'm okay, sorry. But I know it works, and you know, it didn't take more than about 30 seconds before I got a text that was asking me if I had an emergency. So I don't want to steal the county's thunder. They'll be putting the information out on that. I really, from what I've seen of it, I highly recommend this system. It's going to be pretty nice. But in the meantime, you can log into our system. Yes, question? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'll come back here. to really understand what's going on. So, again, I'll get your information and we can kind of talk about what you can do to help us out. Yes, sir. Right. Go ahead.
So usually it's either the person knows what the situation is and they actually ask for a CIT response. And so we'll be on that call. The Hamilton County Dispatch actually has like a pro QA, like questions that they go through. It ends up being certain criteria that they're looking for, like suicidal ideation or something like that, or it's drug or alcoholism, something like that. And they'll end up putting us on that call initially, or we've done a lot of training with the Fishers Police Department. So a lot of times if they're going on a welfare check and they see certain things in the CAD notes, they'll go ahead and request us to come with them.
Right, and we talked about CAD, that's just the computer screen that's in the cars, so that we can look down at notes and see anything that might be particular to that address. And generally, unless there's a medical emergency that needs immediate care, it's only going to be a police officer in the EDO, which, again, before we'd send whole engines and ambulances and, lions, tigers, and bears. They were all there. But it's much more effective this way. Yes, sir?
That's okay. Mm-hmm. Sure. So that's kind of a combination. So we can still do crisis and step in that manner, even when criminal things have happened. The police department is the one that decides whether there's criminal actions that are taken against the individual. But we can do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right.
Does that make sense?
We don't have police powers, if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
So,
oh, yeah. Definitely. It's a team effort because, and one of the reasons that we got involved with all this, because in some cases, there can be an underlying medical condition that mimics, a psychological issue. So a diabetic, for instance, who may be out of it and really can't communicate, but yet they appear to be drunk, or a brain injury, they may take that as being, well, what's going on with this person? We need to take them to jail. Well, no, you don't. They need to go to the hospital or they need to go to behavioral. So we're there to kind of be that intermediary to look at the medical side. Again, we're an advocate for the patient, and we are there to go with that patient even down to the emergency room and act on their behalf as well. We've done that numerous times where we've gone down the ED on patients that, really, particularly on ones that we've gone on multiple times, where it's just not getting done. The ER is not doing what they need to do, or they're not getting referred to the right services. So they'll go down to the emergency room and get with the physician, the psychologist, and say, look, this is what we're seeing. This is where they need to get services. And it's been very beneficial being that patient advocate, getting those services for them, because we're just pushing it a little bit further.
especially when, quite honestly, we're fighting for bed space, right?
Yep.
Within, especially for the behavioral response. And then even patients, especially with autism, I think when we looked at it for the state of Indiana, an autistic patient who is nonverbal, there's 11 beds in the state of Indiana, right? So we're fighting for that. So one of the things that we've helped along the way is really just to be an advocate for that caregiver and for the patient. And so there have been times where we've gone down to Riley with the patient and really helped the physicians and the LCSW understand what's going on in the home and the struggles that the caregiver is having.
Any other questions? Well, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll have some cards in the back if you guys want them, give us a call.
Thank you to our EMS department in Fishers. They are amazing, and it's been a wonderful partnership with everything they're doing to help with mental health and everything the mayor has been doing. It's been spectacular to see what Fishers can do as a community when we're working together, and we are really shining the light. People are coming to look and see what initiatives we're doing here, and they're replicating them all around the country and around the state. So we have a lot to be proud of. So I want to thank all of our speakers today. I hope that you found that this was informative. Like I said, as a caregiver myself, I felt like there is a need for us to look at our caregivers and look at their mental health and support each other. And so I hope that all of you that are here today, maybe for the first time, will consider coming to our quarterly meetings. And so I do have dates already set, April 23rd, July 29th, October 29th. The information is at the resource table over here. And there is a way to sign up to subscribe for the calendar and a newsletter, so to speak, for the Fishers Advisory Committee on Disability. I send out emails, but really we're trying to get everyone signed up through this link to receive the agendas and everything that we're doing. We have over 100 people on our database of people that are wanting to be a part of the Fishers Advisory Committee on Disability. Each and every one of you here, you are important to us and our community. Not everyone can get very involved, but you coming and being a part of our quarterly meetings is really important. Providing feedback. We have about 35 people that are integrally involved in subcommittees. We have various subcommittees. So if you're interested in getting involved, whether it be next year's March Disability Awareness Month, in our housing committee, employment committee, we have all kinds of committees that we welcome people to come. So please find me after this meeting or reach out via email, but we really appreciate you coming here. We want everyone to feel like that you have a place and that you have a voice and that you're supported. So we are always looking for ideas, ways that we can engage people so there is no isolation, that we can support each other and connect each other. So it's really important. So before we end the evening, please take one of these passes to the YMCA. If you know some caregivers, people that weren't able to make it, and you think that they would enjoy it and benefit from the month pass in March, please take some. There's